Welcome back, ladies. Laurel Dawn, and we are going to start off by talking about learning styles. So many of you have probably heard of learning styles before, but I want to introduce them to you in a new way because there are so many people right now that are struggling with communication. They are struggling with relationships. They are struggling in school. They are struggling with interpersonal interactions. And really it all comes down to this. So if you have learned about learning styles before from education classes or leadership classes or anything like that, I am not going against anything you've learned there. I'm just adding to it. So please keep an open mind and don't shut the video off yet if you feel like you already know what learning styles are. So to begin with this, there are audio, visual, kinesthetic / tactile. Now, I get that there are more learning styles than this, but every single of the other learning styles can actually fall into these categories. And so that's why I just teach those. Now, don't overthink this question. If someone is an auditory learner, that means they learn through hearing. If someone is a visual learner, that means they learn through seeing. If someone is kinesthetic or tactile, then they learn best through touch and movement. Now, pretty much 99.8% of the people watching these videos will be over the age of 6 because every once in a while, some of you will have a child sitting on your lap. We all can learn from hearing. We all can learn from seeing. And we all have learned while we did because we had to. What I'm trying to get you to see is what is your dominant style and what do you prefer. So you can determine someone's learning style just by looking at them. And before you overthink this, I feel like I need to say this as well. Some learning styles have been given misconceptions about whether they are good or bad, or right or wrong or better. And none of these are good or bad or better than the others. They just are. And when you're able to learn in your proper learning style, you actually process information at the very fastest level that you can. It is one of the reasons why I make videos and give you a printout and give you lift up and let go techniques so that you can interact as well, because that covers all of the learning styles. So if someone is an auditory learner and you look at them, what feature would you guess would need to be big or out of proportion? Their ears, exactly. So when people have large ears, their primary learning style and communication style is through auditory, which means not necessarily that they're a good listener, but when they hear it, they remember it. Now, if auditory means big ears, what do you think visual means? Big eyes, exactly. So I am a visual learner, and what that means is that if I see it, I remember it. I want to read the instructions when I'm putting together the bookshelf, and I want to see a picture of the finished project. Where a kinesthetic learner, nothing is out of proportion. So they could either have big eyes and big ears, or small eyes and small ears, or they're right in proportion, but nothing is big and nothing is small. So why this is significant is because the majority of people actually fall into kinesthetic or tactile learners. So I'm going to review these really quick, and then I'm going to spend a little bit of extra time on the kinesthetic and tactile portion of this because it encompasses so many people. So because auditory learn best through hearing, these are the type of people that in school, they did really well on anything that was verbally given to them. Any instructions, any lecture, they know that. But they don't necessarily do very good on tests because they can't talk out loud to themselves to answer the questions. So they end up reading the questions kind of mumbling to themselves. So they'll be looking at their test and they'll go, which is totally fine unless they're sitting next to another auditory learner. And then that'll really agitate the other learner. A visual person they're okay with death by PowerPoint because they're seeing it, and so they'll remember it better. But they take really good notes because they have to then go back and read their notes. And a really interesting thing about visual learners is that they will remember what the notes were based on what was around them. So if you change colors while you're taking notes, you'll actually recall the information faster because you'll be able to say, okay, I wrote that in blue, or I wrote that in green, or I wrote that in black. And it will actually help you remember the information more because it's visually stimulating. Now, these are the two learning styles that most people are familiar with, but they're not actually the most common. The most common is this one down here, which is tactile or kinesthetic. Now, both of them like movement, okay? The difference, though, is tactile learners really like to touch. It's not just that they want to move, it's that they want to touch. So they'll be the little kid that sits on the couch next to you and then leans on you. Or they're always filling things. They'll run their finger along the grocery store aisle, moving everything and filling. They touch everything. They touch the couch. They touch the plant. You're constantly saying to them, stop touching that. It's almost like an infant who puts everything in their mouth, but they're like 35 years old, right? So the other thing with tactile and kinesthetic both is that if they get overstimulated physically, they have a hard time concentrating. And so they're very particular about their clothing. If it's itchy, they can't wear it. Now, a visual person, if it is pleasing to the eye, then they'll suffer through it. An audio person, as long as it doesn't make noise when they wear it, they don't really care. But these kinesthetic and tactile people, if you buy them a shirt, the first thing they're going to do is reach out and touch it. And if they like the way it feels, then they'll happily accept the gift. And if they don't like the way it feels, they'll say, thank you. And they'll kind of squinch up their face. It's almost like it's painful for them to touch the gift. They're not going to wear it. Just offer to return it. And next time, take them shopping with you. I have 2 kinesthetic people in my family, and I never buy them anything unless they're with me. They have to try it on. My husband is kinesthetic. When we were buying couches, oh my goodness, it was horrible because he had to sit on every single couch. Well, I'm visual, so I didn't necessarily care if it was comfortable or not. What I cared about is what it looked like in the room. Were the lines right? Was it going to create symmetry? So it was, let's just say I'm glad I knew this because otherwise it could have ended our marriage. We don't just learn this way, we also communicate this way. So kinesthetic people are going to be pen clickers, or they'll be foot dancers. They'll sit and bounce their foot. They're going to fidget a lot. They will have learned that it's socially acceptable to take notes, but they don't ever actually read through them because if they were allowed to move, which writing allows you to move, they process the information. An odd thing, just random information, kinesthetic learners and tactile learners at some point in their day will turn themselves upside down. So they'll do a cartwheel if they'll lay on the couch and put their head off the couch. They'll slouch in their chair and kind of lay their head off the back of the chair, like if they're in a meeting or something and they're getting overwhelmed. But kinesthetic and tactile people will turn themselves upside down because it helps reset their brain. It kind of tells the muscles, take a rest. We're downloading everything. And as soon as the download is complete, they start moving again. So the hard part about this is that kinesthetic and tactile learners are constantly told, hold still. And because they're holding still, their brain isn't processing as fast. So they start to not do as well in school. Now, this is not an excuse to let your child disrupt the classroom. What this does, however, is really reinforce how important it is that kids have recess. So if you have a child that is a kinesthetic learner, when they come home from school, don't put them straight into doing homework. Let them run, let them tip upside down, let them eat, let them fidget, let them giggle, let them move. Even if your husbands, they come home from work, they're going to sit on the couch and turn their head, and they're going to kind of put their head off the side of the couch. Let them. They'll be a better person and a better communicator. So just as we learn through these styles, like I said, we also communicate through them. And so I will try to help people paint a picture when I'm giving instructions, where kinesthetic people are going to move, they're going to be very handsy, they're going to hold you and touch you while they talk to you. And audio people will close their eyes when they're concentrating. So if you know and you can identify what the other people in your family are, it will improve the way that you communicate with them. I know with my kinesthetic daughter, if we're having an in-depth conversation, if I hold her hands and just kind of rub her hands a little bit while we talk, she remembers the information more. Where with my son, who's auditory, that we have to go isolate ourselves so that there's no other sounds in the room, because otherwise he's constantly looking to see what the sound was. And half the time I didn't even hear the sound because I have large eyes and my ears are slightly small. So I hope that you are able to take this and actually put it into practice, because this right here has changed so many people's lives. How we communicate is how we give and want to receive love. So my husband has it kind of easy because he can write me a note on our mirror, and I'm good for like a month, because every morning I wake up and I see the love note that he wrote me, where he is more kinesthetic and he wants the kiss. He wants me to hold his hand. My son that is an auditory, if I write him a note, he's like, oh, thanks. But if I whisper in his ear, that means more to him than anything else. So as he's going to bed at night, I will whisper in his ear. I'll call him by name. I'll tell him I love him, that he's being watched over, that he's safe and protected, and that he is enough. And once I started doing that in his language, he started sleeping better and he started behaving better. With my daughter, I say the same thing, but I have to touch her. I have to hold her shoulders. I have to go cheek to cheek as I whisper in her ear, because she needs the touch. So I hope that you can identify what you are. And I hope that you will take the time to look at your coworkers, to look at your partners, your children, your parents, and find out what they are. Because if you already have a good relationship, imagine what communicating to them in a way they understand best will do. So I invite you to really take into consideration what someone's learning and communication style is, and start talking to them in their language, not yours.